Yeah, welcome back to another episode of Friday with Dhawale. Now, in continuation to our last part one, how can a clinician develop a research mindset in post-COVID times? So, we will continue to explore the internal qualities which we need to inculcate to get a research mindset. So, let's move further and understand how we can proceed to see a different experiences and bring in new qualities which will help us to evolve as a clinician and a researcher. So let's recapitulate a few questions which we have posed for ourselves in the last session. So all those who are seeing this session afresh, please, I request them to go back to the first session and look at these questions which are being posed for clinician to understand the clinical onset, duration, progress, investigations, examinations, and what are the questions which comes in when we are dealing with a new infection called COVID. Similarly, the similar questions will arise in a mind of homeopath who are having an holistic approach to the disease. So whether this disease is a specific organ centered or an individualistic centered or the constitutional impact and how an individual expresses itself in a different sphere depends on the individualization. So susceptibility, miasm, remedy response, this complication, sequelae based on susceptibility. So the multiple questions which this disease has posed for all of us. So let's move and understand what further is we need to explore. The objective of the session 2 is to perceive the differential location of a clinician and a research mindset resulting in their specific mindsets. To understand the specific qualities a clinician needs to inculcate or improve to come to the research mindset, experiencing the process which will inculcate these qualities, and then understanding the dynamic nature of the phenomena which helps the clinician to develop into an evidence. So how does different diseases and different state of clinical entity teaches us. So these are the important objectives which we will further explore in this edition of Friday with Dhawale. Now let's understand a next case. A patient who is a 50 years old staying with a husband who is a 54 years old in a town which is 50 kilometers away from Chennai. The patient is COVID since last 2 weeks and has developed complications. Patient is admitted in a hospital. Husband is unable to visit to ward because of the COVID positive status of the wife. And but he makes it a point to go every day and wait in a waiting room, and he gets a lot of information from there. So he shared most of the data on the phone. He reached out to, and he then contacted his niece in a Bangalore, who is an homeopathic doctor, which got touch in with us at Mumbai. It was very difficult to collect perfect data, and with available symptoms, the case, we tried to evolve the case. So the first consultation, as far as we are concerned, it was on September 14th, where the patient was unconscious. She was on a life support since 2 days. She was not swallowing and exhibited paralysis of both upper and lower limbs since 4 days. She has not passed stool since 4 days. The allopathic doctors who were on duty on the hospital, they were almost hopeless, and they said that it is difficult to recover. Now this is a thing which has come to us, so how shall we evolve the case? We, as an homeopath, now we need to look at the current state. How did it come till this stage? What were the state and the background from which the patient has come? Are we able to explore the whole anamnesis as well as evolution of the current state with the limited data in our hand, with very, very limited access to the investigation reports in a hospital? So now we need to collect evidence, whatever it is, then we have to expand those evidence, understand susceptibility and miasm, and then look at the possible forces and how to use them. So let's understand what has happened from 14th August backward. On August 20, the patient got low-grade fever with 99 and abdominal discomfort. From 22 to 27, patient was hospitalized. There was a breathlessness, which was sudden onset. 77% of lung was involved with CRP 68 and COVID positive. Patient returned home. That lot of tiredness with breathlessness was not able to walk around and do works slowly. So from August 29 to 5 September, this was a state at home. On September 6, there was a severe abdominal pain, constipation, drowsiness, crying with severe pain, and was not sure of diagnosis. So patient was, then the investigations were done where the D-dimer turned out to be 4000, CRP was 15.7. The scan and Doppler repeated at that time, which showed multiple emboli in both GIT and pulmonary artery. Detailed reports are not available, and COVID positive in a moderate titer continued. The physicians treated with all standard treatment for thrombolysis and plasma antibody for COVID. On September 12th was better for 3 days with abdominal pain and constipation, and the patient experienced sudden paralysis. The upper and lower extremity was not able to swallow, not able to speak, and on September 13th went into an unconscious state suddenly. D-dimer continued to be very high. Fibrinogen was 160, CRP was 6, IL-6 was not that high. On September 14, when patient reported to us, he was an unconscious with paralysis of both the limbs on life support. Scan showed clots in brain and in abdomen more than the pulmonary artery, not past stool since 12, with very, very guarded prognosis. All standard treatment was on, but detail was not available with the husband. Now we tried to explore, is there anything which anticipated, or is there some past history? So a very important information we got, the patient at a menopausal age during March had a big episode of menorrhagia with a profuse bleeding. So this was, they controlled with allopathic medicine, and the patient went into a real complication of the past with the thrombus formation. That time she had a severe headache and unconsciousness after 1 day of a headache. Now after 10th of March, so the menorrhagia expressions were suppressed with allopathic treatment. There was no period after that. Then on March 15, there was an hypersensitive skin redness with high blood pressure, high blood sugar of 350, so non-diabetic. Patient was better with steroids, local application of the hypersensitive skin, and she continued the steroid for 4 months. Now this susceptibility, which was suppressed in March with the secretion of menorrhagia, further suppressed with the skin, now coming down with the COVID and post-COVID complications of bleeding and clots, we need to understand the whole march of susceptibility as an homeopath. The current state is not resultant of current illness alone. It is a resultant of the constitution and disposition which have undergone certain processes in a few months, which luckily available with us. So let's understand 5th March severe menorrhagia, 15th with the skin redness, then from 20th to 27th August the COVID started, and from 6th August onwards the phenomena of clots started, and there are multiple emboli which are taking place, which is the post-COVID complications, or is the part of COVID pathophysiology. So from these perspectives, now 14th August, when patient visits to us in a paralysis and unconscious state, we look at the whole case from this perspective. Now we hardly have any characteristic. Whatever information we got from the husband with the past history of suppression. Patient is fagged and depressed. Tissue susceptibility from this perspective is poor. We had seen the suppression happening at the level of Manses with the expression of headache as an important expression at that time, with the skin suppression and the COVID treatment going on with the plasma therapy. So now all this with specific location of the nerves, brain, blood with the clot. Zinkum was the remedy which was thought of, but then how to give with the unconscious patient? So we went back to Organon and we decided to give zinkum 34 hourly by rubbing on the skin. Now we try to also read why is the zinkum given, zincovate or zinc as a element given as a supplement, and we could relate that the zinc is related with the clotting mechanisms. And then we also studied materia medica, which showed corresponding the impact at the level of nerves and brain, which has got suppressed discharge and eruption, descending paralysis, worse exhaustion, mental and physical, with suppressed eruptions, menses, discharge. Patient is better with free discharge, lightning like pain or paralysis of feet. So all these symptoms, when we are referred Phatak's materia medica as well as bogus synoptic, and affection of brain from sudden stoppage of diarrhea, and headache as a concomitant of varying intensity. So zinkum was given on 14th. On 16th 9, we got the report that, that the unconsciousness is better. Patient passed and stool on her own. Abdominal discomfort was much better and vitals were stable. So we asked them to continue to rub it 4 hourly. On 18, patient gained consciousness. The stools she was passing regularly, and the follow-up scan showed no clots in brain, and the rest is same. So on 20th 10/20, I mean I'm talking of 2 days back, seeing around, talking, started feeling pains which she was absolutely senseless. The sensations were also disturbed, so she started feeling those sensations. She started swallowing food and no tubes, and she started demanding food because she felt hungry. So now this is a march of event after giving zinkum. The current state also, she is better as of today. Now the questions comes to a clinician: is this the routine evolution of the disease, or what is special about this? How is studying susceptibility from evolutionary angle is important to another current state? What is the role of possible suppression of expression on current state disease evolution and complications? Can we predict from our study of susceptibility and miasm which cases will have a difficult course in COVID? What will be the outcome and long-term effect of these complications and sequelae? Can we evolve a better framework to receive these cases and understand the prescribing totality? How to determine possible action of zinc, and in that sense, any materia medica or any remedies which we have prescribed? How can we relate this standard protocol of allopathic treatment which is going on and the homeopathic protocol which we are now trying to follow, and how our interventions are becoming a supportive or an important landmark in recovery of the cases? And can we relate the physiological action of drug like zinkum and our materia medica which has got pathogenesis, and understand the action of these in a much deeper dimensions? Now this opens up the Pandora's box for us to explore. Friends, this is the important mindset which we need to develop, because just treating a case is not going to help. Now the previous case we encountered the complications of COVID, and in this case, now let's see the next case. The 78 years old allopathic physician who was working in COVID ICU. He was using protective gear but came down on July 8 with frequent diarrhea and weakness, generalized and dryness of tongue and scanty watery stool, non-offensive. And suddenly he felt weak and was not able to go to the work. So from 9 to 12 July, all symptoms were status quo, 3 to 4 times per day. Weakness was extreme, low-grade fever, continuous vomiting, and aversion to food. He was given treatment for amoebic infection. He was highly anxious, was anticipating what will happen. So on 13th onward, only continued with the stool, and then 13th onward the stool stopped, but fever went up 103. Weakness was extreme. He was advised hospitalization with COVID, lot of anxiety with fear of COVID and something deeper happening. And he was not sure what will be the future, being a 78 years old physician who knows the outcome of COVID. On July 14th, the condition was same. SpO2 further decreased. We don't have the exact number. All standard treatment were there. CRP was 35, total count 8,500, and lungs bilateral opacities were there, and anxiety was extreme. By on 15 to 18, under all standard medications, the fever spike came down, cough was better, but weakness was almost same. All standard medications were on, but CRP was 75, ferritin was normal. Gradually, patient became quieter and not talking, but started getting hopeful of recovery. Now, this anxiety and the state of how will he be able to recover, he has become little hopeful. Asymptomatic weakness was getting better from 19 to 22nd July. Blood test, CRP came down. IV steroid course was complete. Now, patient report to us on 23rd that only generalized weakness, which was slightly better. But the whole problem here was that the moment they withdraw the oxygen support, the SpO2 falls below 90. And but the mental state here, he was hopeful. The daughter was very anxious, as the physicians there were guarded on prognosis, that because they were not able to understand the whole thing in spite of reports are becoming favorable. So we tried to formulate the totality, and we understood that with a small quantity of stool, the patient went into great weakness and sudden collapse. The initial diarrhea and with sudden sinking of vital force, rapid sinking strength, insensibility, great remedy for inflammatory response. The mental state, which also got into an alternating state from a great anxiety and fear to the hopefulness. So weakness, rapid sinking, collapse state, inflammatory response and alternating mental state guided us to camphor 1M, and we tried to give 1 hourly with a high sensitivity to gradually withdraw oxygen and see what happens. Now, instead of 4 hourly, we gave it 1 hourly and see if we can withdraw oxygen. Now, oxygen was withdrawn from 11 p.m. and it was able to manage till 4 a.m. Weakness was better after camphor. On 24th, again the oxygen withdrawn from 10 to 4 p.m. He was maintaining oxygen. The camphor was made 4 hourly. And on 25th morning follow-up, he was without oxygen support from night 10. He did not need oxygen. And he was, on 25th, he was discharged and sent home. His chronic day case was defined, which was silica, and 31 dose was given at night. And after that, patient improved drastically. He, in his weakness, his inactivity, and he rejoined the COVID work in hospital. We will not go into detail of his chronic totality. We prescribed on this totality to the silica, but we could see he had a family history of mother who had high BP and diabetes. He died at old age, but father died of MI at 49 years of age. So this also talks of possible syphilitic background, which has taken him into such an extreme state. But with the possible help of whatever standard protocol treatment and homeopathic intervention, this patient improved. Now, questions for the satisfied clinicians. We know that, okay, we have treated both the cases, or that count. What have we treated? What was the patient suffering from? The complications or sequelae? What were the role of Ginkum and camphor? What are the clinico-pathological states? Role of homeopathy in treating the post-COVID state at physical and mental level. And how do we manage these? Now, these are the questions which are posed to a satisfied clinician, but a research mindset will not get satisfied. So all four cases prima facie give satisfaction of managing COVID and COVID complications and sequelae in a different stage and stages. Clinician is satisfied, may extract experience and apply. Can we prove that homeopathy was worked? Difficult. Can a clinician demonstrate the standard guideline and how and why of investigations and outcome which we have seen? Can a clinician acquire an insight into changing susceptibility and why this outcome of the disease and how we have used different forces? Now, these four cases are not enough because they are of a different qualities, different varieties. And we cannot generalize based on these four cases. And we need to collect evidence. Now, how can we collect this evidence? By acquiring research mindset. Now, how do we acquire this research mindset? Because we have to shift from a person who is happy and satisfied being a clinician whose primary perspective is to collect the data, be in properly on positive frame of mind, understand the clinical and communicative skills, manages the patient, manage them with utmost care. So a clinician is more acquiring competencies in communication with the patient, collecting data, managing them, guiding them. But being on research mindset, he has to develop an inquiring mind. So anything and everything which is visiting his door, he need to get into inquiring mind and get into the state of curiosity so that he understands what, why, how of all these phenomena, what we have seen in all those four cases. And this is only possible if he is good at his core knowledge of all the subjects, both clinically and homeopathically. If he is having a core knowledge with the extensions, he will be able to acquire the research mindset. He also learns to do the critical appraisal. What is critical appraisal? Is a clinical analysis, the critical evaluation and synthesis. Now, are all these qualities foreign to an homeopath? No. They are part of a training of an homeopath who is being evolved and trained in an inductive and deductive logic. So how many times are we conscious of this? And being an homeopath, you know that Hahnemann was the first researcher to whom we encounter ourselves, and the quality which he inculcated, and he went on exploring the natural phenomena and brought in a concept of simillimum and a concept of chronic disease and concept of posology. And the whole organon is a result of this inquiring mind, the curiosity, the good at the core knowledge with the critical appraisal. And he went on collecting those evidences and put them in a proper perspective so that the organon came out for all of us professional to practice. Can we all have a conscious research mindset in this perspective? So we owe all our mindset to Dr. Hahnemann, but we don't follow all his qualities. Now there is a call post-COVID, consciously that we should follow those qualities. In addition to that, we also need to learn that what is ethics, what is ethical practice, and what is ethical research, and how can we use those ethics in our endeavor to deliver a quality care to community. Now you just cannot withdraw something or some stop oxygen. In the case where we asked to experiment on withdrawal with the consent of the physician, the patient was closely monitored. So we need to understand how this research mindset and the clinicians follows the ethics and govern the practice, the clinical perspective as well as the research perspective. Now we cannot treat these cases, or we cannot evolve the research without teamwork. Now even when you read the biography of Hahnemann or other stalwarts, they all have worked in team. When you read the provings in chronic disease or provings in Mathematica Pura, you will realize the number of people participated. Now, this ability to get people in, work in a team, it goes a long way in bringing in a research mindset, because you alone cannot do it. Lot of things which needs to be communicated, which needs to be published. When you communicate your experience with the others, the cumulative experiences can bring about and standard guidelines, which, because individual cannot have access to multiple cases and can have the evidence for each perspective requires a different setup in a different areas with the different qualities to come together, and that is only possible if we are fully able to communicate our research through our research mindset. Now, these are the basic qualities which we can inculcate to form a research mindset. So how can we now transfer these qualities in our day-to-day practice? By consciously, we live this research mindset. We need to take these questions and learning in multiple diseases, not alone COVID. Now, COVID has taught us that how closely we need to observe, to document, and to learn from each day experiences with changing scenarios. We need to formulate the standard approach, and that is only possible after we gather evidence and we evolve guidelines through action learning, so that we can add quality addition to available literature as well as available experiences. We need to communicate these experiences to world over, so that our outcome and our experiences can be validated, can be refined, and can be applied, and we get a quality feedback. We need to evolve a teamwork, which we have discussed, and we can do it in a multiple field for better insight and evolution. And we need to understand the ethics in clinical practice and governance through research mindset, and vice versa. So all the experiences throughout these two presentations, which we are connected, has given us a lot of questions, and which are only possible to answer if we have research mindset. Now, the conceptual framework, yes, it is there in Organon. The guidelines, yes, there is in Organon, but how to apply in a specific illness, in a specific state, in a specific disease, with a specific susceptibility, with the specific miasmatic progress, is what each of us need to explore and document, so that the generations and the communities of homeopaths will get benefit, and indirectly we will help humanity to be more healthy and productive in time to come. The whole presentation, I acknowledge Dr. Kamlesh, Dr. Sunil, and Dr. Lata for providing the opportunity of treating these cases and giving permission to communicate with homeopathic fraternity all over. The chairman, the faculty, and student of MLD MHI, with whom I have interacted and got these insights, and Dr. Keyur for the technical support which he has provided relentlessly, and being after me to record these experiences and communicate these insights to the fraternity. Thank you. Thank you all for being patient listening. And I expect feedbacks from both these presentations, so that we can further work to evolve a research mindset. Thank you.